Thank you, sir. Now let's get introduced to our chief guest for today, Shri Achyut Godbole. One intends to create a vision whereby his name becomes synonymous with excellence, innovation, honor, integrity, and his outstanding quality service. Friends, it gives me both honor and privilege to introduce you to a role model of note with all these qualities and a man of distinction, a hyperactive chemical, an author and a corporate honko, a man of many abilities. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, none other than Mr. Achyut Godbole. He has been there, done that, and he is not stopped. From a small town, Kolhapur in Maharashtra, India, to being the CEO of top IT companies, to hosting music shows on television, to authoring books on operating systems, management, and economics, to winning several awards. He is just unstoppable. We are honored to have Mr. Achyut Godbole in International Conference on Emerging Trends in Engineering, Technology and Architecture 2017. Always a topper at school and college, he has scored 100% marks in nearly all exams right from first to engineering in IIT. He stood 16th in SSC exam and topped all the universities. He graduated as a chemical engineer from IIT Mumbai in 1972. But being an IITian, there were plenty jobs offers for him. However, he decided to work for the Adivasis in Dhule. He has distinguished himself as internationally renowned personality in the field of information technology and author. Author of about more than 30 books, Mr. Godbole is very popularly known for making the learning easier for others. He has authored 3 large books with almost 800 pages on technical subjects like operating system, data communications, networking, and web technologies, all published by McGraw-Hill. His books are even referred as textbooks in many universities in India and abroad, and have been translated in languages such as Chinese. Icing on the cake is his passion about music, literature, economics, science, management, and psychology. These are not merely hobbies for him, but they are very integral part of his life. He has authored many books in Marathi as well. His books, Sanganak Yug on computers, Boardroom on management, Nadved on music, Kimyagar on science, Arthat on economics, Gulam on slavery, Thaiman Changalwadache on psychology have been extremely popular. Friends, being author of many articles on technology in technical magazines, journals, and websites, Mr. Godbole is regular contributor to Marathi newspapers and all TV channels. His columns, Zaburza on English literature, Tantra Mantra on latest technology, Bakhar Sanganakache on history of computers, Udyache Jug about tomorrow's world have been immensely popular. In his long corporate career of 35 plus years, he worked with many companies. He contributed to building of about 5 companies, including Patni, Sintel, and L&T Infotech, which grew many-fold times in terms of employee strength and turnover during his tenure. Currently, he is shouldering the responsibility as Managing Director at Soft Excel Consultancy Services, Mumbai. He has been involved in software industry for over 32 plus years by now. He was awarded twice by IBM World Trade Corporation for performance excellence. He was instrumental in designing an ERP package in UK and implementing it in many companies in Holland, UK, and Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure by now you all must have known a great deal about Sir, but there is more to Mr. Achyut Godbole apart from all this. He has an apt adjective, an all-rounder, a hyperactive chemical to describe his multitude of activities in short. He was awarded Kumar Gandharv Award by Pandit Bhimsen Joshi for contribution to music and technology. He has currently over 4,000 books in his personal library and 2,000 and more CDs and cassettes with music from 18 countries. He is also actively involved in social work. He runs a school for autistic children at Andheri, Mumbai, and is planning to start many such schools in all the districts of Maharashtra. Around the world in 80 days, is true with his name and has traveled all over the world for more than 150 times for business. Unflinching dedication, passion, sincerity, and eagerness to learn new every day is a reason behind his success as a multi-achiever. His name and his achievements in sprinting have earned him great honors. He is a recipient of very prestigious Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIT in 2000 for his contribution to information technology and education. He was awarded Udyog Ratna by Indian Economic Council for his contribution to information technology industry. For excellent performance of his companies in software exports, he has been awarded twice by the Prime Minister, and the list goes on. He is recipient of Sahyadri Navratna Award, Indradhanu Award, Dr. Parnekar Award, and C.D. Deshmukh Award. He believes in entrepreneurial risk-taking abilities. It should be inculcated in students and to convert them from engineers to creators. Sir, you indeed have infused an honor and zeal into this function, and we are truly happy to have you here. I request, sir, to please proceed towards the dais and address the audience.
Thanks a lot for this kind introduction. I've respected dignitaries on the dais and friends. First of all, I must thank D.Y. Patil Institute for having called me here to address all of you about not just tomorrow's world, but technology yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I think the subject is pretty apt because the conference is about technology and what's likely to happen tomorrow and what we should do. First of all, I'm very happy that such a conference is organized. I think it's very well timed. It's very essential, very necessary. So I congratulate the Institute and I wish the seminar and the conference a great success. When I talk about technology yesterday, today and tomorrow, I normally start with the history of the universe, and you will quickly realize why I am doing so. Universe was created around 14 billion years ago. Earth was created 4.5 billion years ago, and first living being came into existence around 3.75 billion years ago. And then there was evolution. There was, human being. The history of human beings spans for around 100,000 years. The history of human history can be divided in three main epochs as per Alvin Toffler: agriculture, industry, and services. Agriculture spanned for tens of thousands of years, but there was no progress, and therefore there was no change in the way people lived. People lived in the same way today as they did yesterday, this week as they did last week, and this month as they did last month, and year, and decade, and centuries, and so on, because there was hardly any technology. So they lived in the same way that they did maybe centuries, before. Then came Industrial Revolution, only a few centuries ago, and then the progress that we made only in a few centuries of Industrial Revolution, or post-Industrial Revolution, was much higher than the progress that we made in the era of agriculture, that is tens of thousands of years. And then came services, that is modern services, which started with 1960, and the progress that we made in the few decades of services from 1960 to now is much higher than the progress that we made in many centuries of industry, which in turn was much higher than the progress that we made in tens of thousands of years of agriculture. So the reason I'm telling you this is, all of those who know mathematics, obviously, we're talking about d2y by dx2. We're not talking about dy by dx. The rate of change. I mean, it's so enormous and so tremendous that in IIT we had a rack full of books about futurism, what's likely to happen in future. Today, very few people actually dare to even talk about what's likely to happen because it's so unpredictable. Give you some idea. The progress that we made in the last 10 years is much higher than the progress that we made in the entire history of mankind, period. And the reason is not because we've become suddenly wiser, the reason is not because we've become suddenly more intelligent, is because we are standing on the shoulders of our predecessors, as Newton used to say. I mean, we are standing on the shoulders of the predecessors. That's why the progress is multifolds now. But I'm talking about technological progress. We as human beings are not progressing. We still catch each other's necks. We still are at war with each other. We still lie. We still, all that kind of stuff. So we are not sort of progressed in terms of values and the way we lead our lives, but in terms of technology, we have progressed enormously. If we look at the services era, that is this 1960 onwards, and break it up into 5 decades, there are 5 distinct decades. 1960s was a era of mainframes, 1970s was mini computers, 1980s was PCs, 1990s was internet, and 2000 onwards was mobile computing. I mean, there are clearly 5 decades which actually were dominated by certain technological trends. It doesn't mean that there are other trends which were absent, but these trends dominated those centuries. Fortunately, I have lived through all of those. In 1960, there was mainframes, and mainframes, were very large. They used to occupy. They had to be, housed in a room which was as large as this. The room had to be air conditioned. People didn't understand how computers worked. There were flickering lights inside, and when programmers used to run around with punch cards, if some of you may have known. And there was batch processing. There was no online processing or real-time processing. Today, when you reserve a seat in an airplane or a cinema hall, and second person wants to reserve another seat, the same seat, the next moment, you can't do it because it's reserved. It's real-time processing. In those days, it was batch processing. Punch the cards, take a listing, check whether the data is correct or not, then correct the data, then again feed the data, and so on and so forth until the data is correct, and then take the report. So they were all delayed than the actual event, right? So it did not get the reports in time. Therefore, users were very reluctant to use computers. So computers were used only for batch processing or storing large data in banks and so on. Computers were essentially a matter of prestige because they were expensive. Though they were not used, they were expensive. Therefore, Ford used to boast about, we have computers. If Ford has a computer, so Chrysler has a computer. Chrysler has a computer, so General Motors has a computer. So it's a matter of pride more than its utility. And then came 1970s, and many computers, the prices fell, the sizes fell according to Moore's law, but the databases started, happening. I mean, being made use of. But even then, prices were very high, and ordinary people, it was beyond the reach of the ordinary people, and ordinary people couldn't use it. There was still that fear about computers. Then came 1980s, and I would like to sort of stay on 1980s for around 8-10 minutes. It's very important. Because all of us, at least not just information technology, but all the people talking about technology here in India or even overseas or in America or everywhere else, why this IT so-called revolution has taken place is because what happened in 1980s. In 1980s, the most important thing that happened was the advent or the emergence of personal computer, which is PC. The prices fell, the sizes fell, the power increased, and suddenly PCs started appearing on the desks of lawyers and doctors and professors and colleges and offices and stuff like that. Initially the prices were high, but in a few years, the PCs started appearing on the desks of many people. PCs had multimedia. We all human beings have been communicating in 4 types of media. Text, when you press a key on a keyboard, A to Z, 0 to 9, it's converted into zeros and ones and stored on the disk. Then digital photograph. Any photograph, when you take a photograph on digital camera or mobile phone, it's converted into zeros and ones and stored. Sound, when you play a CD, it's converted into zeros and ones and stored. And moving picture, that's DVD, when you play a DVD, it's of course stored in zeros and ones. And all these 4 formats, only when these that we have been communicating from age-old times, when these all 4 formats can be converted into zeros and ones, can be stored onto the disk, then can be manipulated, changed, unfortunately for wrong reasons, but changed, deleted, printed, it's called as multimedia. There was no multimedia until then. With PCs there was multimedia. There were colors, there was GUI. And suddenly, computers started becoming very friendly. People started realizing that after all there's a machine that they can use. And that gave rise to enormous amount of imagination, and computers started invading just about every walk of life, and that changed the entire scenario. Until in the decade of 1960s and 70s, I remember in 1970s, I was in IBM, I used to go to the users, and we used to just beg to the users, please give us some work. And the users used to ask, why should we give you some work? And because they were very happy with the manual systems. The computer systems were batch processing systems which used to actually give reports much later than the manual system, quite often. And our USP was, I will do exactly what you do manually on computer. So reproducing what you do manually was our great, the reason why we should automate is that we will do everything that we do manually exactly the same, in the same fashion on computer. That was a mantra. That was the reason we, in fact, sold the computing or programming services to our users. And they didn't buy our argument at all, because they did. Many people developed some systems, batch processing systems and so on, but they were not used very properly. They were not attractive. Users were not convinced. In fact, in those days, people were so afraid of computers, they didn't know what was happening inside with flickering lights. There were only two places that people used to remove chappals, or shoes. One was computer room, another was temples. Because in both the places, they didn't know what was happening inside and how decisions were taken. It's much better and safer to remove chappals and shoes. So that was a, kind of era. With PCs, for the first time, information technology boldly made a statement to businesses, I no longer will imitate you, I no longer will mimic you, or I no longer will just reproduce what you produce manually. I will in fact show you how you can do your business better, far more efficiently, and in fact, if you don't use me, you will be thrown out of business. That was the boldest statement ever to be made to businesses. The reason was, in 1980s, in management terms, those who have done MBA, whatever, even if you have not done MBA or are well read, will probably know that there is a principle called BPR, Business Process Reengineering. And that was the theme in 1980s. In fact, Jack Welch, and I used to visit the US in those days quite often and had a lot of dealings with General Electric, which was run by Jack Welch. Jack Welch and many other companies, BPR was very popular. What was BPR? BPR means business process reengineering, which means whatever you do manually, until that time, people used to just improve that process by incrementally, by 5-10%. By maybe changing the color of the form, maybe changing the number of copies of the form, maybe changing the routing of the form throughout the organization, from from purchasing to production to etc. etc. So basically, they used to always think of some ways to improve the productivity, improve the efficiency by changing some of these parameters and bring about some improvement, maybe incrementally. BPR and said, I'm not interested in just incremental improvement. Throw away the old process, use computers and communications and install a completely new revolutionary process that will increase and enhance your efficiency enormously. I'll give you 2-3 examples. ATMs, for instance. Earlier, when you wanted to withdraw cash, you used to go to the bank, you used to stand in the queue, you used to be given a token, then the bell used to ring, ting, ting, you used to go to the counter, then the teller clerk used to dispense with the cash, right? With ATMs, that process was not improved incrementally. It was thrown away. With ATMs, the old process was completely obliterated, as the book Reengineering the Corporation says. The process was obliterated and new process was brought into existence. Take animation, for instance. In animation, Walt Disney had employed hundreds of artists in his garage. How do you do animation? If you want to show a cat running from one end of the wall to the other end of the wall, the artist used to draw a picture with a cat at one end of the wall, with another picture with the cat having moved still a little bit, a third picture with the cat having moved still a little bit, and so on and so forth, until the last picture with the cat has moved to the other end of the wall. Shoot all these pictures, put them on a reel, and show those pictures at a particular speed, normally more than 10 per second, certainly more than 10 per second, normally 24 per second. Why? Because of the property of our retina. Any picture which falls on our retina is retained for 1/10 of a second. So before the first one fades away, if the second one falls on our retina, before the second one fades away, the third one falls on our retina, it cheats our eye and creates an impression as if the cat is running. That is the basic principle, as we all know. Therefore, the artists, hundreds of artists had to actually draw these pictures. For 1 second of a cartoon film of Tom and Jerry, 10 pictures minimum. So 1 minute means 60 pictures, and 1 hour means 36,000 pictures, I guess. Now, 3600, 30, whatever. But then artists had to draw for 1 hour of Tom and Jerry picture, they had to draw thousands of pictures. Of course, there was tracing, several tricks, so they could actually, reduce the time spent. But even then, the efforts were enormous. Then came in 1980 the software which is called in-betweening, and that said, the software said, give me a picture of the cat at one end, give me the picture of the cat at the other end, and I will, there is a software using graphics and geometry and so on, I will generate all the pictures in between, put them on a reel, and then show them to you at whatever speed you choose to see. Which means that the artists were jobless. I'll return to this theme in the last 3-4 minutes. The obsolescence started increasing. Unlearning and learning became a mantra. You no longer could enter an organization where you could do the same job all your life. Because all like tailor clerks were jobless unless you unlearned and learned something new. The artists were jobless unless they unlearned and learned something new. Same was the case with typists. With word processing, typing is all gone. Earlier, the typewriter, how typewriters used to work. With DTP, of course, the changes are far more with page making and so on. So unless you learn these new tricks, the old typists lost their job. Same is true with CAD/CAM in engineering. Earlier, in fact, I've been to a Boeing factory, and if you go to any automobile factory, even